Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are going to finish up with the Rape of Lucrece today. There's only 5 stanzas left, and it felt a little weird to do 4 stanzas and then save one for tomorrow with a wrap-up. So we'll finish it up. We're looking at stanzas 261 to 265. And for those of you who have not been tuning in most of this time, because this is a long poem about sexual violence towards women and suicidal ideation, totally get that. Maybe skip today, but come on back tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to have a brand new poem to take a look at. So in these stanzas and where we are, we're obviously at the end of things. We know that Lucretia was raped by Sextus Tarquinius. She told her husband about it. She told like his whole train about it. She made them all swear revenge, and then she killed herself. And her husband and her father are sort of fighting over who has more of a right to grieve for her and like who is more affected by her passing. But then Brutus, who's the one who took the knife out of her chest, which allowed blood to like flow everywhere, he had been considered a bit of a fool, maybe a bit of a court jester type character, but seeing this back and forth between Collatine and Lucretius, he's like, you know, guys, listen up just a second, like pretend for a second that I'm not an idiot and just listen to what I have to say. And stanza 261 picks up with Brutus speaking, saying, "Why, Collatine, is woe the cure for woe? Do wounds help wounds, or grief help grievous deeds? Is it revenge to give thyself a blow for his foul act by whom thy fair wife bleeds? Such childish humor from weak minds proceeds. Thy wretched wife mistook the matter so, to slay herself that should have slain her foe. Courageous Roman, do not steep thy heart in such relenting dew of lamentations, but kneel with me and help to bear thy part, to rouse our Roman gods with invocations, that they will suffer these abominations, since Rome herself in them doth stand disgraced, by our strong arms from forth her fair streets chased. Now, by the Capitol that we adore, and by this chaste blood so unjustly stained, by heaven's fair sun that breeds the fat earth's store, by all our country rights in Rome maintained, and by chaste Lucretia's soul that late complained her wrongs to us, and by this bloody knife, we will revenge the death of this true wife." That said, he struck his hand upon his breast and kissed the fatal knife to end his vow, and to his protestation urged the rest, who, wondering at him, did his words allow. Then jointly to the ground their knees they bow, and that deep vow which Brutus made before he doth again repeat, and that they swore. When they had sworn to this advised doom, they did conclude to bear dead Lucrece thence, to show her bleeding body through Rome, and so to publish Tarquin's foul offense, which, being done with speedy diligence, the Romans plausibly did give consent to Tarquin's everlasting banishment. And that's the end of the poem. So what this starts out with, we'll talk about this first, and then we'll get into a little bit of a recap. This starts out with Brutus saying, you know, Collatine, nothing's going to get fixed if you just sit and cry about this. You know, if you're wounded, do you give yourself more wounds, or do you try to do something to fix it? Like, she took the wrong path. She wounded the wound by killing herself, when what she really should have done is go and get revenge. So swear with me now that we're all going to go get revenge on Tarquin. This is what we're supposed to do. You know, this is what we need to do for her, for Lucretia, who was a beautiful, chaste, honorable, loyal wife who now did this. We have to go get revenge on Tarquin. So he kisses the knife and he gets on his knees to swear this oath that he will do this, and all of the rest of them join him. And then they decide that they are going to take Lucretia's body and sort of parade her through the streets, or maybe not parade her through the streets, like a funeral procession kind of thing through the streets, so that everybody can see what happened to her, so that everybody, the entire city of Rome, is in agreement that Tarquin is banished from here until eternity. So, and that's the end of the poem, which is an interesting place to end it. Like it's kind of a nice ending, and you could see it theatrically ending that way, with them like lifting her and carrying her off the stage if you were going to perform this somewhere. But we know from the argument, or at least it's mentioned in the end of the argument, which is the very beginning of the play, so go back like 2 months, that this was sort of a defining moment in Roman politics, when they switched over from having kings to having consuls because of all of this sort of stuff. And that gets left out of the end of the poem. And maybe because it's not quite so dramatic to do that, and maybe he didn't want to shift into like policy and stuff like that, which I completely understand. I mean, this is why certain prequels to certain movies flop, you know, when you're loving this whole fantasy world that you're in, and then the prequel just deals with like political conversations in a Senate room. It's a little bit bland. So maybe Shakespeare was just trying to quit while he was ahead. In general, I think that this is a good poem. It's really well done, aside from a couple of things. I think that it does a good job of trying to get into the different mindsets of the different characters, so that you as the audience can understand why the things are happening. I mean, we almost, in a sick way, we get a real nice look into Sextus Tarquinius's mind, where even he's like, should I do this, should I not do this? But the battle between should I, shouldn't I, his lust and his ethics clashing, I think that that's really well done. I think that Lucretia's grief is beautifully expressed in this. Everything from her, you know, just sitting and crying, to not being able to talk about it, to tearing at a painting, to hardly being able to speak Tarquin's name before she kills herself, all of that. You know, I think that it's well done, and it very much pulls you into the world in which this exists. One thing that I want, aside from maybe, you know, like the Senate thing, which it's probably fine that the Senate thing isn't in there, but the other thing that I think is maybe just a little smidge missing that they might want to tack on the end of this is the fact that once Tarquin is done and he leaves her in the middle of the night, you know, he's done his thing and then he feels guilty about it, he leaves, and we never see or hear from him again. So we don't get to see him actually process what he did. We don't get to see him get his comeuppance when this whole train of people go to get their revenge on him. We spend so much of the first half of the poem focusing on him and his lust versus his ethics and his desires and all of that, and then he's just sort of gone and we don't hear from him again, which is maybe a little bit interesting. And maybe that is so that the last image that we have of him is him doing this rather monstrous, horrible thing to Lucretia. Maybe we want to keep that idea in our heads and not empathize with him too much. But yeah, I would love to hear what y'all thought of this poem. If you stuck around to hear it, if you were able to stomach some of the harder parts, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So please leave a comment. And then tomorrow we're going to start into a new poem, which is so short it's only going to take us one day. I'll see you tomorrow for that. Mwah.